Alrighty. Let's get at it.
From the government, and I'm here to help. Take a look. It's in a book. Some members of the use their platforms to push their own personal bias and agenda. Let's watch. Figure it out.
Tonight we have Adam Swart. He's the CEO and founder of Crowds on Demand. And they're a company that's kind of in the middle right now, I guess you would say, of one of the, it's kind of a strange question, but also a strong question, how much of like all of these public relations we see right now going on are quote unquote real or whatever anybody wants to call them. So,
let's get at it.
Yeah, people think
let's get at
it's
it. Well,
Tell us what you're about.
Yeah, let's start by kind of debunking the idea that there's real versus fake. Real is what I agree with, fake is what I disagree with. So let's start with that. So let's start with the idea that most people think that anything that they disagree with is all fake, it's all a scam, it's all just billionaires, it's all just like conspiracy, and everything that they agree with is all grassroots, it's all genuine, we're all lovely kumbaya, right? So let's start this whole podcast by debunking that that's a whole lot of shit, right? We all kind of agree that let's not like both sides, liberals, conservatives, right, have big donors behind them, right, who have various reasons for supporting them, both kind of policy reasons, but maybe financial reasons, maybe other reasons for supporting them, right? So, like, I think we can't, like, this whole idea, like, of the term astroturf is just like, okay, stuff I don't agree with. So,
Yep.
like, movements that, and I don't know, I have no idea where you guys are politically, but liberals, movements such as gay rights, civil rights have a ton of money behind it. Conservative movements, MAGA, Tea Party, ton of money behind it, right? So these are all movements that, let's just say, maybe make some valid points, maybe, you know, also have a lot of supporters who believe in it, but also have a ton of money behind it. So, like, instead of trying to make this sort of dichotomy of real versus fake, I think the better way to put it is what are what are we like what is the purpose of a protest? What is the purpose of a movement? Right? And start from there and then go.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So if perception can change the reality on that, right? More you like to talk, you've said in your interviews, you're going to stop, and if 50 people are outside, front of a store with a sign, you're going to stop and pay attention to that.
Heck yeah.
And I think it goes back to what you are saying there, because even when our Donald Trump president, right, wasn't president before, he still had enough money to go stand and cause a quote unquote protest as well. So it is both sides that do the same thing. What is real and what is fake?
But of course,
right?
one thing he is very good at, even way before his time in politics, has been media. That's always
Yes.
actually been his best skill, right? I mean, I think I don't know whether he was a particularly good real estate business person. His best skill was always media and brand, and his most of his money came from like The Apprentice and which was media, and then his various brand deals that were an offshoot of that. I mean, his actual real estate investments, weren't particularly successful, is my understanding.
Yeah,
His
he wasn't
success is
he was waiting on a deal to happen just so he could get himself out of legal trouble.
Yeah,
If
so
I
his success is as media, and I don't say this to insult the man.
No,
I'm merely saying this to say this is a man who knows something about how the media is done, right?
exactly.
And so obviously he knows how to use protests, whether they're for him or against him, to favor him, right? Because the other thing you have to keep in mind that something that's against you can actually help you, right? So I had a client recently who said, I want to do this protest against this person. I said, because I'm very upset at this person. And I said, well, you realize that if we do this, that actually helps that person. So, like, we're happy to do the protest, but the effect is going to actually be favorable to them, right?
Um,
So sometimes a protest, especially if you're savvy, you can use that because we are defined by who we are for, but also who is against us, right? So if I am a far left politician and MAGA protesters are there saying I'm a socialist. Well, I'm like, yeah, MAGA wants me to lose, so you should vote for me because MAGA is coming after me. Or vice versa, if I'm a MAGA candidate and I have a bunch of blue-haired leftists, out there being like he's transphobic, he's racist, well, I'm like, well, they're coming after me because I'm so effective, right? So protest is not having a protest against you is not always now. By the way, you can actually have it be like sort of to mutual best interest, right? So if you think about like the squad, the far left versus like the sort of equivalent on the right, like the Lauren Boebert or whoever on the right, and they would always go at it, but it was always actually for mutual benefit because they're like both of their profiles grew as a result of that
Absolutely.
Yeah.
that battle. So if you know how to use media, you can use things that are maybe theoretically negative to be positive. I mean, that's not
Yeah,
exactly
the
the concept, but
the enemy of my enemy is my friend, almost type of
exactly,
thing.
exactly.
Um, it's good you just brought that up because I had noticed on one of your most recent ones you talked about turning down 20 million for Good Trouble Lives On. And is that
Uh-huh.
what you were kind of mentioning? You had said it's going to make us all look bad. And I was kind of curious, is it going to make like the your company look bad for what you're doing or like the general idea of what they
Yeah.
had going on?
Well, it's actually this is sort of an interesting example of that, right? Because people have been protesting Trump from the left for over 10 years now, right? And it has generally been unsuccessful, right? If the goal is to weaken Trump's political power. So the goal, theoretically, is to say, oh, we're against Trump. Well, if you're against Trump, protesting him actually helps him because he gets to say, oh, well, look at them. They're always protesting me. You know what I mean? How ridiculous. It's because I'm working for you and because I'm not satisfying their wacky agenda,
Yeah.
right? Now, what's more concerning to Trump, and I presented this to them, is like, hey, if you can try to draw in people from his coalition to come oppose him politically in protest or otherwise, well, that starts then he's not going to be happy, right? So this Epstein thing or all of that, or like having Tucker against, like, I mean, that he doesn't like at all, right? But when it's sort of like, okay, we're almost at July 4th, so I'm a historian, amateur, so let's go back to the War of Independence, right? The Continental Army did not fight the British Army directly. They did it indirectly. So when you're left and coming at right, or right and coming at left, it generally does not behoove you to go directly at someone on the right from the left or from the left from the right. So I always say if you're going after someone on the left, you hit them from the left. Have a left wing group figure out what they did that was racist, sexist, homophobic, right? If you're on the right, figure out a way that you can call them fake MAGA, a rhino, whatever, never Trump, So you people benefit from attacks from the other side. You really don't like when you're being attacked from your own side. So that's far more concerning.
Mm-hmm.
It
So
is.
if you go back to this good trouble or whatever, all that is just to say that this was not going to have the intended effect. And um, because the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, right? Uh, I mean, there's probably, they always say that's the definition of insanity, but there's a lot of other things. I would say the definition of insanity is being on the streets and throwing your feces at someone. I mean, I feel like
Yeah,
that's almost more insane,
Right.
absolutely.
but whatever.
That's also just Portland too at the same time, you know.
That's right. That's right. Or San Francisco. But yeah, so at any rate, the my point is I just didn't think it would be effective. But I think that what I like to do with Crowds on Man, I've been doing this for almost 15 years, is I like to be a little bit outside the box. And I like to work on nuanced efforts. And I like to take on causes that other people aren't taking on or aren't being talked about in the right way. So I don't want to be part of the noise. So I don't want to do Israel versus Palestine. And I don't really want to do Democrat versus Republican or vice versa. I want to do advance a nuance of that cause, right? So I'm not saying I won't do national politics. We do and we will, but it has to be something different, some idea that is not being talked about that we, through our unique ability to gather all these people to, you know, advocate unconventionally, can make sure people are aware of, right? What's the point of me bringing out another couple 100,000, million, whatever people into the street? What does that do? Right? What does that do? Like,
You actually walk me through like that entire effort, like from like somebody getting a hold of you to actually like getting a crowd. Because like I guess that's a big question in my mind on like how that all transpires, I
Yeah, how
guess.
does that?
like
It's almost
sure.
like you build a social media following, quote unquote, every time somebody's asking you for this, and that's
Well, it
impressive
depends
to
on
me.
the scale. I mean, so one misnomer is that we're mostly doing these like thousands of people. Our average crowd size is like 50 to 100. Um, so because by the way, as you said, you can do a lot with 50 people. So and 50 people can have a lot of resonance.
Mhm.
So well, okay, so people will come to us with one of two ideas, or maybe some combination. One is, here's what I want to get done. Tell me how to do it. Second is, this is what I need done, and this is how many people. Tell me how to, like, how much it's going to cost and whatever to do it. Either way, we might work with them to optimize it because someone might start with thousands of people and say, okay, well, this is going to be really expensive. Maybe we can do the same thing with 200 people and have the same effect or whatever. So fine.
Yeah.
But we once we kind of figure out an action strategy, and one thing is I like to talk to and about is how ordinary people can be their best advocates. So let me give you some free tips, and this is how I do work through every campaign. So, number one, what are we looking to achieve? What is the end goal, right? I mean, maybe there's a short-term, medium, long-term goal, but what are those goals? And which of those goals are maybe achievable and which of these are maybe pipe dreams? Well, either way, I want to know both. Well, from there, who can we protest or advocate to, whatever, to achieve those goals, right? So if your goal is local, then your action should be local. If your goal is national, like I think it's always funny when I see people are protesting Los Angeles City Hall to protest Donald Trump. Well, I don't think there is a single Republican in the LA City Council. And if I think maybe there is one, but they're not even a Trump Republican. So, like,
Who
okay.
are you advocating to? Yeah.
So, what is the point of this? Like, so, so when you do this, you want to figure out what are the things that that person cares about that you can tailor the movement towards, right? So, for example, let's just say I'm making the case to for clearing homeless encampments, but I'm making it to someone on the left. So saying these encampments are unsightly and are hurting local businesses. Well, maybe they don't give a shit about that, right? But maybe what we say is that these encampments are putting communities of color at disproportionate risk because they are, right? So, and say what you are doing is actually racist because you are putting communities of color at risk by allowing dangerous people, drug addicts, on their streets. So you are putting Mexicans, black people, whatever, at risk through those actions. So you are a racist. So if you do not support the tents being cleared, you are a racist. So that's a little more compelling, isn't it, to someone on the
Hmm.
left? They're not going to want to be called a racist. They might, they might not care about being called anti-business. You see what I'm saying? Now,
Right.
it's not a disingenuous argument. It's a very valid argument, but
Yeah.
you're tailoring it toward in a way that might resonate with that person in a different way,
It's more
right?
of a lobby than an argument at that point.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. But you have to tailor it in a way that makes sense to them. I mean, I read a great book. What's it? It's by this guy who was like my age in the Vietnam War, and he ended up being the CIA station chief in Saigon during the Vietnam War. And he was like very high up in the CIA. Normally, you that would be someone much older. And he was like, he learned that making a moral argument to the CIA doesn't work, right? You don't tell them, oh, this is morally wrong. They don't give a shit, right? Tell them why it won't work or it will work, right? That is what resonates.
Right.
So if you're dealing with a far left council person, maybe the racist argument works, calling him racist. If you're dealing with maybe like a kind of Machiavellian agency, maybe the practical argument works, right? So you have to tailor your argument to who you're talking about, right? And then you need to implement it in an effective manner, of course, with the protests. So all of which to say, I mean, obviously these are good questions, but I wanted to unpack exactly how we do it.
Yeah, that was
Does that
perfect.
do you get a little bit better grasp because if you go to your website and read a little bit about it, you handle publicity stuff too, right? Like I'm assuming if like a Kim Kardashian wants a bigger birthday party, she could get a hold of you type stuff.
Well, I mean, I don't know whether
Mhm.
she would, but maybe someone a level down from that, perhaps.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that I mean, but yes, and moreover, a lot of what we do is like PR stunts, press conferences, product launches. You just need people in the building. Why is it? It's because of context. So it's not disingenuous to have people out there because all that does is it serves as a catalyst for getting your argument across. So I had this argument with these. I had this like very very boisterous argument with these bros who were on their podcast and very nice guys, but they're really giving me shit about my business. And I said, you guys are promoting a hard seltzer. And like, if you're promoting a hard seltzer, uh, why do you have a bikini girl on the front instead of a fat guy in his mom's basement? Right? Is that not disingenuous? Like, am I going to get a bikini girl just for buying your seltzer? Like, or you're trying to put your seltzer in the right context for me to purchase it, right? So there's a reason you don't have the fat guy in his mom's basement. You have the bikini girl because you're trying to contextualize your product as fun and summery, not as lonely and depressing, right?
Yeah.
So it's not a bad thing.
No,
But how do you insult what I do when you are doing the same thing?
absolutely. That's
Yeah.
that's kind of what I meant with the Trump thing too, for both sides. It's like everybody's doing it. And I don't think it's so much a bad idea to put people there because it is, the people are going to say no, you're a Black Lives Matter isn't going to show up to a MAGA rally at the same exact time,
Hell no. And
You
vice
know.
versa. And
Yeah,
vice
they're not going
versa.
to agree to
And
that,
this is the thing, for what we pay people enough to compensate them well for their time, but not for getting people to betray their convictions. Um,
Right.
and
Right.
like it's just so funny also to hear these sort of commentators like also like say things that aren't are unkind. And it's like, well, so you're a commentator, you're making 7, 8 figures, some of these people, not all, but like Rogan has a 9 figure deal, right?
Oh
With
yeah.
Spotify or whatever he's on, right? So he's like, oh, well, you're not genuine, right? Well, it's like, I'm sorry. So you're telling me that someone getting paid a couple $100 is somehow selling out for cash. And then
Yeah.
I'm supposed to believe that what you're saying for hundreds of millions of dollars is the complete unvarnished, genuine truth. Like, really?
Um, and you're pushing the TPDA. You want a transparency act
Oh
on
yeah.
this whole thing.
And I want it. I
And,
think
and you're
it's like
being
I'm saying,
accused the most almost too of hiding your funds.
well, and I want to I like here's the thing, the way I look at it is I don't want to be the only guy in his underwear. I want us all to take our clothes off and show what we have. You know what I mean? Metaphorically. Not right
I
here.
mean,
Um,
whatever.
but but metaphorically so because what we're doing is people are like, oh well, why don't Adam you reveal out all of your stuff? It's like, well, let's all reveal. So anything over 500 participants, let's share who's funding it and who's also the vendors behind it. So let's do it. I mean, but Congress, like, I'm pushing them, but you know how Congress is.
Um, do they even, I mean, you have what, you're going on 13 years now in it. You
Almost
have
15.
the,
15.
yeah, almost 15. My bad. You did say that at the beginning.
Yeah.
If anybody's going to have insight of where this kind of stuff is going inside and see the back numbers, it would be a 15-year-old company, and
Yeah.
I would think the way you wrote it of what needs to be looked at. But why, what
Yeah.
is Congress, what's their pushback on that?
Well, I think the so I think first of all, we haven't gotten to the point where we're getting legal pushback. I mean, there could be legal pushback in the regards to because I mean it's a challenging issue, and I really respect the other side who doesn't want this passed because their Supreme Court has regularly affirmed the right of anonymous free speech. Why? And by the way, I support anonymous free speech to some extent because, for example, I've worked with a lot of liberal and conservative clients that are worried about cancel culture mobs. It used to be cancel culture was only on the left. Now we have right wing cancel culture mobs, right?
Yep.
So it's so stupid, right? And the problem is that if you're a well to do individual, you have corporate board seats, whatever, and it comes out, oh, this guy supports the left or this guy supports the right, now you have the cancel culture people on you. So they should be free to support their causes through me or anyone else, but I'm one of the people who help facilitates that, without having to disclose and then be subjected to that scrutiny. Now, what I think is important though is scale. That's why I said 500 people or more as a large enough event that I think rises to this scale where I think certain transparency is needed. So I don't think you should need at every one. I also am like very loath to have more government regulation of any kind. So I don't want to impose a burden on people organizing events. But I think anything over 500, I think is a pretty large event. So if you're able to organize over 500 people, you're also able to sort of have these sort of compliances. And chances are you have certain money and vendors behind it.
Yeah, at
So,
some point they asked for a permit or a
well,
gathering
yeah.
thing, so
And by the way, for most of these large events where you're blocking off streets, you have to have a permit. You have to have bathroom facilities legally. That's really expensive. Have you ever tried ordering porta potties? They're freaking expensive.
yeah.
Uh, at a certain scale, you also are required to have medical as well. Police like presence, but that are off duty that often you as the organizer have to pay. So like there's a lot of money and all of this to say is I don't mean by transparency to delegitimize what's going on. I think there's a lot of very legitimate expenses. I just want people to see it. And I think if people see it, they're going to actually have a little more faith in the system.
Exactly. You're not going to go out there and care about if the people have somewhere to go to the bathroom if you really don't care about the idea, you're going to be like,
Yeah,
give them a street and get them out of here,
exactly.
or also at the same time, we're not going to have people here placing on the conspiracy side, a pallet of bricks in the lower income areas where they think rioting is going to happen,
Well, and that's unacceptable. That's not a legitimate form of protest.
No, yeah, it's not at all. And that's people too much tie it to lower income, I guess, and then it gets held to one spot. And then it's like, okay, well, what side is actually dealing with lower income? And I think that's where a lot of your attacks come from too, because nobody's going to say that a MAGA protester needs to have somebody paid there. They're going to be like, there's millions of us. We don't need people. Then they're going to turn around and attack the other side. Well, there's nobody could really agree with you. You must be paying the people, and
Yeah, totally.
that's not organic. Just because there's money, it's not organic. I'm still good at my job, even though I get paid every day to go to it. It doesn't make me care for it any less.
Totally. I agree with that.
Yeah. Yeah. Also, you within your like transparency, there's a big problem, I think, where like foreign governments could have got into this, you know. So I like the Transparency Act too, because right now I feel America's open for anything, you know, we're kind of
Yes.
everything's everywhere.
Well, and our adversaries are attempting to use division in our country to further exact like look, we are a democracy. It's going to be messy sometimes. That's fine.
Right.
Yep.
But
I feel like we're at a point where this can either be a domestic product or a foreign product, right? And
yeah,
with the Transparency Act, I mean, that would definitely help that. So that way, if we know if it's Israel funding this protest or if it's, an American protest,
China,
you
right?
well, yeah,
know?
I think we need to understand it, and obviously, as we kind of really get into the nitty-gritty of enforcement, what the biggest thing is to look up and down the chain, right? Because you could have someone who is maybe on face the donor when maybe there are people behind them that aren't disclosed. So you'd have to implement it correctly. And again, you'd have to implement it in a way that doesn't restrict people's rights. But I think the idea of putting this forward is let's talk about it and let's nail it down.
Could a foreign like billionaire or not, you know, they're not for, I guess that's not the word I'm looking for. Could a foreign entity infiltrate, you think, through this and
Well, I
really
think
buy
that we
an
have to
American opinion?
well, even with this act, there's a lot of threats of foreign interference. I've even offered to the government to help crack down on that, and they have not taken me up on it. They don't understand. It's like Russian dolls. So there's like a web of company after company after company after shell entity or whatever. So it's so easy to set this up. I mean, it's costly, but if it's doable. And so it's really hard if somebody is like really looking to prevent that from being revealed. So that it is a challenge, but you have to basically go through, and I would focus more for the foreign entity on whoever's funding the violence. Like we really need to go up the chain. Like I see a lot of coverage of, oh, there are bricks. Okay, well, who bought the bricks? Who? Okay, find that person, arrest that person, offer them a deal if they tell us who paid them, and then you go up the chain, right? Like, and why are they not doing this? This is like not very quality work.
Yeah.
Do
And if you don't go up the chain, all you're gonna get is some
The
local,
little fish, right? You're
yeah,
you're going after like the drug abuser versus the drug supplier, right?
yeah. I want to know who was at the top of that list.
do you do you ever consider like maybe also branching off into helping people know who they can believe, since, you know, 15 years here, if crowds are manufactured in the street and bots manufactured online. I read a thing the other day, they said China spams us with bots 80% like sex and porn bots that aren't real during a time of distrust and like dissolve in America. So
Sure. I mean, I don't know that to be true, but that's
how do we know
believable.
what to believe, right?
Well, I mean, that's part of why I go on shows like yours is to talk to people about that. I think we need more primary source education in this country, um, and and probably around the world. But when I was in school, and probably you guys too, I learned how to read a primary source. So let's just say there's some like video like racist Karen goes on unhinged rant. Well, okay, primary source is the video, right? Ideally, like the full video with the full context. So I can determine was she a racist Karen or was she not, right?
Right.
Versus NBC News saying this is what happened or
Taking
Buzz.
the clip, right?
Yeah. And a lot of people won't even read the clip. They'll just read the
The headline
article.
of the clip. Yeah.
So people have to understand what's a secondary source or a primary source. So I want to make it easy for people to read primary sources because when you can see a primary source, then you can evaluate for yourself, well, what is it that I saw, right? And then maybe also uh, discuss, well, what is the relevance of that? So let's just say it is a racist Karen. Well, why is this newsworthy to me that there was some wacky lady, racist lady 2,000 miles away from me? How does that like maybe if she was unhinged, should she be arrested? Maybe. But should she be isolated and canceled for life and fired from her job and disowned by her from her family? Like, probably not. Let's say. I mean,
That's
so
tough in the world of social media nowadays,
that's
Yeah.
right. That's right.
the way it spreads, and the way it can go. You'd mentioned astroturfing at the beginning. How much are you accused of that? Like fake political
Well, I
prowess,
think I answered it at the very beginning of
right?
saying that the term itself is fake.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Good.
just referring to I mean, every movement that you like and every movement that you dislike has been created by people that for the purpose of persuading other people. So, what's the difference?
No, yeah, you're absolutely right. You want it says that your policy, your disclosure act, you want to establish ground rules for activism to preserve our
Yes.
basic freedoms, right? So you can stop
Yes.
the malign actors attacking our system.
Yes.
Um, I, I worry like policing and protesting. Are we now Colin Kaepernick almost wasn't even allowed to kneel, but that was a form of protesting. Like his rights allowed him to do that, but we hung him, and what I'm afraid of is it's only going to get more tight on that too as well.
Well, I think actually the Kaepernick issue is interesting, right? Because no one said he wasn't allowed to kneel, but this is NFL policy of his employer, right? So this is the challenge is the problem with free speech laws, the restrictions on free speech is they may not be imposed upon us by the government. They may be imposed upon us by private entities. So it was absolutely would not have been illegal for Kaepernick to kneel, right? At any point, right? Unless it's in front of traffic on the Golden Gate Bridge.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
Right.
but the challenge is his employer, NFL, right, um, has their own policies. Now, I understand and I respect that employers need to have some boundary between politics and work, right? For example, there's a debate about flight attendants wearing Palestine or Israel flag pins, right? It's a very contentious issue. My opinion on that is as a flight attendant, you're not political. The only flag pin you should be allowed to wear is the American flag pin because you're in the US. But I don't like it just because you're engaged when you put one of those flag pins on, you're essentially making a political statement.
you're
And
opening the door for it.
but here's the
Yeah. The
distinction.
whole political identity thing just
But
playing
here's the
out.
distinction. When you're on duty, you should not be able to put Israel or Palestine flag pin on your lapel. But when you are off duty, you should, in my opinion, the problem is not on duty, it is off duty. Off duty, you should be assuming it's peaceful and lawful, allowed to engage in any form of activism you choose because you are a flight attendant. You don't represent United Airlines or American Airlines. So
Yeah.
if you're going to a Palestine protest in a kufia, or you're going to waving a Israeli flag at a Israeli rally, what business is it of United Airlines, provided you're not engaging in any unlawful conduct, if that's what you do? But actually, one challenge of cancel culture right now is that people in the cancel culture are trying to get people canceled for what they're doing off duty. And I understand if you're the CEO of United Airlines, you probably shouldn't be at either protest, right?
Yeah.
Because you're a public figure.
Yep.
And one of the trade-offs that you take as a public figure is maybe you shouldn't be politically engaged because you recognize you have to deal with everybody, right? But if you're a
Yeah.
flight attendant, that's an entry line employee. Why should you not be allowed to participate in political discourse in a capacity non-representative of your company? So I think that there's a big distinction. So I know that was a long-winded answer to Kaepernick, but the challenge with Kaepernick is when he's kneeling on the field in his jersey, representing his team and
Yep.
representing the NFL, this is his capacity in the workplace.
And
Now,
it's not like he could have he can kneel without the jersey, and a million people are still going to see him. He's famous, you know.
I mean, I don't know the answer to that question. Whether, like, let's just say the NFL were to say, like, now what I don't agree with is it shouldn't be subjective. I think the NFL should be able to say, we don't want anybody engaged in politics
Yep.
officially on their off time at all. But they should certainly not be cherry picking and saying, oh, this cause is okay, that cause is not. Because
Yeah.
that's the bigger problem. I think I would respect if the NFL said, look, we need to appeal to all of the American people, and I don't want our players engaging in politics, frankly. You can
Yeah.
vote, but that's it.
Yeah.
I
And
respect
what
that. But
and what happened to not telling who you voted for while we're on that real quick? Now everybody's got bumper stickers, flags, you know, it used to you used
It's
to
a
not even
whole
supposed to
identity.
ask. Yeah.
Yeah.
politics is the new religion. Now people are like on a dating site. No one really cares what religion you are or not. People don't care that much. But your politics are your religion. And everyone who I know who is single right now basically says they either want within their sect or within like one sect of that, right? So if you're MAGA conservative, maybe you're okay with someone who's like maybe a little bit less MAGA. Maybe if you're far left, you're okay with maybe moderate left, but not too far. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. A little side here. My wife, she watches like the reality shows, and one of them, they're all in LA there, you know, and the person they called her a Republican, and she was so offended, you know. And but it is, you know, it was the identity and almost a religion. It had hurt her more than her own friends just saying something
Oh,
personal.
that's very true. Yeah, there have been multiple people kicked off the Real Housewives for being conservative, which I think is stupid because the whole concept of being also the term housewife, like come
Housewife.
on.
Yeah. Like, sounds like a strong, independent woman.
So like
So
I'm sorry, you're supposed to take six well-to-do ladies in Orange County and not one of them is supposed to be conservative? Like what?
um going back to a little bit ago too, also you mentioned Lauren Boebert. We are Colorado. We live in the rural part of Colorado. So
Yeah.
she happens to be our representative down there. We deal with a lot. It's a huge our state, you know, is big with gay rights, and you know, our governor right now, people hate. They think he's running into ground for giving it all away to energy and gay rights and things like that, you know. So you're a good guest to have on for that right now, I think. Do you
Colorado is
think
very
it's
interesting because the governor has also drawn very upset from the left for kind of being more independent willed, right? Because he was kind of voted more as like a liberal Democrat, but he's sort of governed very centrist, is my understanding,
yes.
right? And a lot of the left is really not happy with him at
Yeah.
all,
Yeah,
is my
he
understanding.
still sticks yeah, he'll look back. He lets you know, hardened criminals still go that the left even looks at and goes, "What are we doing here?" You know, or
Yeah,
he gives business loans out to companies that are obviously not in it for that. You know, those types of things.
yeah,
It's
sure.
like I'm just trying to be there for everybody, and it's like um, that leads into with our governor. You know, he's kind of a picture person when we voted him in. You know, LGBTQ rights were huge. Marijuana legalization, guns, you know, we have all this in our state. You know, there's really no restriction on anything here in Colorado anymore. So,
Other than guns.
yeah.
I went the other way.
In a state like that, do you think votes are more or perception in America in that is more controlled by the vote or the perception? Like, is
I
our state going to mean more if you can work here? You get what I'm saying? Like, I think your tactic would work here.
Yeah, I mean, I think that people in Colorado are independent voters. I think our style works best with independent voters. However, when you're dealing with non-independent voters, you just have to reach them differently. Like I gave you the example of the race argument in regards to like a left-wing city council member. So I think it helps when people are basically like, I'm open to any party who makes sense. That's smart. I think Colorado voters of all the people in the West are probably the most independent, right? Because they're willing to do their research. I think I'm from California, so I can speak to it from California. most Californians do not even look at the Republican at all.
Yeah, they just
Like
vote blue
they
down the
won't even
line.
consider a
Wow.
Republican. So even if they made a all the sense in the world, they're basically I'm not voting for. They're not going to vote for a Republican. And in fairness, um, I know people in other states who would never consider voting for a Democrat, right? What I think is, but I think that you're actually foolish for doing that because I think here's the thing: there's two groups that are worse screwed over in the country. Black people, urban folks, voters who vote 90% Democrat, and white rural voters who vote 80, 90% Republican, right? Why do those guys get screwed over? Because they vote 80, 90%, right? Their vote is in the bag. So the Democrats don't give a crap about black voters because they know that the vote is taken for granted, right? So go to the streets of the black communities, right? Or in rural communities, I've driven through a lot of rural parts of Colorado. They're struggling with fentanyl, with opioids, with sometimes the biggest, nicest buildings in some parts of the state are literally the hospital, which is dealing with these things, right?
Yep.
So why do you vote? Why do rural white voters keep voting for the people who fuck them over? And why do urban black voters keep voting for the people who fuck them over? So to me, they are that speaking of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again, right? It's like if they are independent, go to Florida, where the voters have historically been independent. They've gotten a lot of what they want done because they're independent. If you come in and say, look, what are you going to do for me? That gives you so much more power than my vote is already in the bag. So why don't you focus your your attention on people whose vote is not in the bag? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So being an independent voter is really the only smart way to be right now because that way, tell them and independent voter, tell your politician this is what I want, and if you don't give it for me, then I'm going to vote for the person who will.
I think that description right there is exactly why they try to still keep us divided. You hit
That's
it
right.
on
They want. Yeah. They
because
they want to keep and even like issues like the one thing I think is funny is like so the Democrats when their back is against the corner, the Democrats use the race argument. They're like, oh, they're racist. Biden is like to the black voters, they'll put you back in chains. Remember that?
Mhm.
And then similarly with the conservatives, they use the trans argument of, well, it doesn't matter about Epstein or Iran. Well, because if you don't vote for us, they're gonna make your kids
They're
all
gonna make you
into
all gay.
transgender, right? So because what is that tactic is to say shut up and be loyal because the other side is worse. Well, no, I'm not going to shut up and I'm not going to be loyal because I'm only loyal to America. I'm not loyal to fucking politicians. Sorry for my language, but
no, it's
I
perfect.
think they do not deserve our loyalty. Not one of them deserves our loyalty, in my opinion.
Exactly.
And if the one comes on that seems good, just wait for them to be caught in some bullshit. You know what I mean? So I don't give
Hmm.
any of them my loyalty because look, there are politicians that I might listen to that make sense, but I don't know what they're doing or on whose island that they are, and I don't assume any good intent by any of them.
even even I
Yeah,
mean
if you want to be in politics in general, I just question,
Yeah,
everybody
you
was
know.
on Thomas Massey's side in Kentucky, and then he lost.
yeah,
And now it's come to light his biggest donor is also an APAC, like 8 million a
really,
year.
yo,
Israel,
that's
yeah,
interesting.
Yas something is his donor,
Sure.
and it's like,
So like look, there's no one pure. So what's beautiful, like I'm a constitutionalist, studied the Constitution. The great thing about our Constitution is it doesn't assume that our leaders are pure. It actually assumes that they're flawed men. Just
Mhm.
like our founding fathers were flawed men. They were slave owners. They're not perfect men. I mean, so they knew that they were imperfect and they knew that their successors would be imperfect, right? So how is our country still around 250 years later? Because this is a system run based on that premise. So what I say is to people, don't worship your politicians, hold them accountable, make them do the right thing, not because they want to do the right thing, but because you are telling them they better do it, or they're going to, or they're going to get voted out of office, right? Or they're going to lose power. That's
Hmm.
what you have to do. It's incentive. You can't rely on them doing the right thing out of their own volition. That rarely, rarely, rarely happens.
Yeah,
Because if you look at any politician, very rare. I mean, like, okay, even look at like a Marjorie Taylor Greene or whatever, Thomas Massey, right? Like, okay, fine. Do do they have convictions? Like, do I think there's some sincerity? Sure, but Marjorie Taylor Greene's probably going to be on The View making millions of dollars, right? I'm sure Thomas Massey has amazing like lucrative prospects ahead of him
hmm
given his reach, right? So like yeah, were they principled? Like maybe. I mean, I don't know. I can't speak to their intent. But there's certainly also going to be benefits for them for having done what they've done.
well, yeah,
So I don't
their
assume that they're
battle,
just pure people.
it's
Yeah, it's no
always
longer like a
consensus.
servitude, right? Like at a
Hmm.
certain level, it becomes not a servitude. Like your local mayor may or may not collect a paycheck at all, right?
Hmm.
Where the president makes $1 million. Like you're gonna make that on investments anyway. So why do you even need a six-figure
Absolutely.
paycheck?
Um,
Especially if all your constituents are making far less.
it's turned to the appearance of consensus. If
Yes.
you got to be on their side. You're in
Yes.
the group. Um,
So instead
we
of pretending like we have good politicians, I'm gonna go in, I go in with politicians assuming they're dirtbag, and let's operate on that principle. Not that they're evil, but they're gonna do so. Here's the thing. Good people, good, pure, but that's rare, um, are gonna do things that are against their interests to serve humanity.
absolutely.
Bad people are going to do things that are against their interests to hurt humanity, right? Your average person will just serve their interest, right? So, like, think about like an evil person. They might do some evil act because they're depraved. It might not be in their interest to do that, their objective interests to do that. Look at the most psychopathic criminals. It's not in their interest to do those psychopathic things. They do it because they're depraved. Just like a good person may run into a burning building to save someone because they are good. But your
Yep.
average person is going to do things because that's where the incentives lie. It doesn't mean they're good or bad. It's just that's who they are. So let's not worship these people and assume, oh, that's a courageous stand or whatever. Like people are like, oh, Gavin Newsom, he married gay couples, in 2006. Yeah, he was the mayor of San Francisco.
That
He's
was
a
his
smart
Yeah,
job.
what
guy.
else would you
He knew
do?
that he's been running on that for 20 years as a result. So
Hmm.
he's just an extremely savvy politician. He's not some courageous guy.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a track record. Um, we know we got to let you go now, dude. Thank you very much.
Yeah, this has been fun, gentlemen.
This has been excellent, man. You're Adam, you're a real person too. That's
I am.
yeah, a lot of
Well,
people, it gets out there and it gets bigger than that, or the whole
some people
crowd's
think
on
I'm an
demand.
AI hologram,
Yeah.
so which I could still be. You wouldn't really know.
Yeah, we
You
wouldn't know.
wouldn't be
This
able
is
to
online.
fully verify that.
Yep.
But hopefully you can take my word for
It's
it.
okay, I believe you, so you're real to me.
Yeah,
I
there it
like it.
is.
That's your truth. That's your truth. So,
we
really nice talking to you, gentlemen, and I really look forward to continuing this dialogue.
Yeah, anything you want to say before you go? Anything you
No,
want
I'm
people to know?
great.
Awesome, man. We appreciate you
Visit
coming on.
crowdsondemand.com. And oh, actually, okay. You know what?
Yeah,
Before
let's
I
do it.
wrap, I have one thing more to say to the audience. So I talked about like you guys can use these tactics in your life, right? Is that a lot of you may not be involved in politics or maybe have limited involvement in politics, but you can be an advocate in your own life for any instance, right? So let's just say your insurance company denies your claim or you're behind on the rent and your landlord is threatening to evict you. These are ordinary instances where you can be your own advocate and say, think about the tactics that I shared. What is it I want? Who can help me get what I want? What are the arguments that I can make to them? Right? So if I'm asking for my landlord not to evict me, making the argument of, oh, I have two kids and I have a cat and I have a dog, it's not their problem,
That's more to
right?
get out.
But yeah, that they what they might care about is I just got a job. I'm gonna get current in a month. Evicting me is going to take a lot longer than that, and it's going to cost you a lot more money. So let's make a deal that helps me, but also helps you, right? So that's an example of like understanding how to make that argument. So I just want people to understand you can all be your own best advocates as well.
Great advice. Awesome, man. That's a way to put what you do into everyday everything, you know, and I think people need to take that from I it's going to sound crude here, but smarter than us people as you are, you know,
I
you
try to
figure
be.
things out, you
I'm
know.
not, I would
Yeah.
never claim to be smarter than anybody though,
No,
because
but
like
your niche, you know, you
yeah,
understand the workings
It
of these
it
things
is
and you
your
can apply it.
profession, sir, for
Yeah.
sure.
that is my profession. But I try not to think of myself as smart because the dumbest people aren't people who actually have low IQ. They're people who actually are smart but not aren't quite as smart as they think they are. So I try to not run afoul of that trap. Um
Nice.
well, nice being with you guys this
Yes, man.
afternoon, and I look forward to doing it again.
Absolutely, dude. Thank you for coming on. Travel safe. Adam Swart, CEO of Crowds on Demand. Crowdsondemand.com, folks. And we are the end of Day's Best Friends. We'll catch y'all on the next one.
If you don't first subscribe, press your head.